Some call it the Green Hell, others call it the largest and longest public road course in the world, but drivers know it simply as the longest and most complex circuit in racing. Who will master the Nürburgring in these complex machines, and who will find themselves wishing they hadn't turned on the simulator this morning? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch Round 3 of the iRacing Grand Prix Legends series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. I'm Adam Lindgren, and with me in the booth is Nicholas Hillebrand. In the booth is our director, Christian Deploy, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. An epic combination of corners and elevation changes, the Nürburgring never disappoints, and to find out why, let's take you down to our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to the Nürburgring. Nicknamed the Green Hell by three-time F1 world champion Sir Jackie Stewart, It is often regarded as the greatest test of a driver anywhere on the planet. Just looking at the stats will tell you why. While the combined version holds a swath of choices, they all include 100+ corners and range between 14 and 16 miles, or 24 to 26 kilometers in length. Add to that roughly 1,000 feet in elevation change over the course of the lap, and it's easy to see what's so impressive about it. Simply memorizing the course is over half the battle for drivers, let alone being fast. It goes without saying that the Nordschleife portion is dangerous. Many fast corners lack runoff, there's blind apexes everywhere, and in a couple cases, even modern cars will get airborne. The list of famous turns is pretty lengthy, but some of the more notorious are places such as fluke lots, miss hit miss, bravery corner, and of course, the ever iconic carousel. It's not just the places where you have to move the wheel to get attention too. The Dodinger Hoa stretches for more than 1.5 miles in length. However, that isn't even digging into the Grand Prix portion of the circuit. Much more open and safer in nature, it's no less challenging from a technical standpoint. Passing is still surprisingly hard in most cars, and corners such as the Schumacher S can spit you into the barrier if you don't respect the curbs. Events such as the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring offer drivers of many skill levels the chance to tackle this behemoth, and still draws gigantic grids to this day. Many race fans consider this the mecca of road racing, and any driver who is able to push the limits here often quickly garners their respect.
Well, this place has a long history and one that is pockmarked with lots of different F1 cars, lots of different races around here. But Nico, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the Lotus 49s are going to handle this track?
Well, 169, 170 corners around here, 16.12 miles, and, well, in metric units, that's 25.94 kilometers. So there's quite a bit of track coming towards these guys for these laps in this race, and also quite a lot of elevation change. I think most iconic part about the Green Hell.
Yeah, and this place definitely has a lot of elevation changes, like you said. These 49s can actually take the jump, and it is quite a jump, as we saw on our track map. Let's take you down to our race details, though, really quickly. And it's going to be round 3 of 12 for these drivers. 4 laps out there with open setups. They can set up the car however they like or dislike. They have no spare vehicle, and they have a drive-through at 17 incidents and a disqualification at 25. And so let's also go over the points today. We've got, in Formula 1, we have Andres Valenteus leading with 115 points over Jorge Nieva, who's only 4 points behind. A very tight fight for that top position. Seb Tixier is going to be 15 points back in a distant third. And then it's Raul Roches Guardia tied with Bill Tyler for that 4th position. Xavier Sanchez only 1 point back in 6th. And then we have Gary Ho in a tight battle with John Olsen for that 7th spot. And then Matthew Keane and Nicola Kochi are going to be tied up, or not tied up, but very close, only separated by 4 points for 9th and 10th. But what about Formula 2, Nico?
Well, in Formula 2, it's also looking quite interesting. Roberto Pangrazi leading there currently with 72 points. A little bit of a gap to Tobias Helmvie in 2nd, but he's getting breathing down his neck from Thomas Villershausen and then Thomas Tuber as well. Both of them just 5 and 7 points behind him. Mats Linden follows in 5th place, a point behind. Then Ben Summers another point behind in 6th place, followed by Jonathan Jourdain in 7th. Then Eric Asari, and followed by Meunier Stefan and Eduardo Socaras in 10th place.
And then in the Nations Cup, it's Lithuania with the lead, 115 points over Spain with 111, only 4 points back. Then Singapore is that 15 points distance, and then the United States with 21 points behind the lead, and Italy only 3 points behind them. Tied between the UK and Australia, 37 points back, and then Sweden, Argentina are both tied as well for the 8th position, and Finland down in 10th spot. Nico, this is going to be a challenge of a race for the drivers to handle. There are so many corners to get right or wrong, and each one sets up the next, and it can be a real challenge to keep your momentum up, especially in these older vehicles.
Nürburgring is one of those special circuits, especially the Nordschleife, where even though the historic version where they ran back in the day is still deceptively different, you know, a lot of different elevation changes and all that. Like, for example, we saw that wonderful jump that the 49 does here on Flugplatz. that corner, or well, that hill before the corner used to be even steeper, so they had to properly brake and lift off before the crest. And besides that, with the track obviously getting faster, if you put 1 foot wrong, you're instantly close to the grass, you're instantly in the wall, and that's just it.
And how hard is it to take the carousel in these machines? Does it take it fairly well, or does it have a tendency to spit you out if you take it a little bit too quick?
I think that's all down to how they set up the suspension, simply because you don't really have any aero load on these cars. You know, you actually, as opposed to normal race cars nowadays, which creates downforce, these cars actually create lift at speed. So you can run these springs a lot softer. You can run this a lot more pleasant, so to say. So you have a little bit more wiggle room with the suspension travel as well. So you basically just load up the suspension as you go into the carousel, go out, and as long as you're not a bit, well, too eager on the throttle as you're coming out, then you should be all A-okay.
And so what would you pick as far as the suspension? Would you go softer or a little bit harder around the Nürburgring around here?
With the suspension itself, it's a bit of a difficult call, simply because you need that initial turn-in and the stiffness a little bit to keep the car agile, but also simply because you have a bit more grip over all those bumps, you want to run a little bit softer. So it's a balance that the drivers have to hit with the suspension and the anti-roll bars, of course, as well.
Currently in our warm-up practice, 3 minutes to go before we grid. There was detached qualifying today, so the qualifying order has already been set, but we have yet to see that ourselves in the simulator. But it's going to be a tough race out there today. Currently on track, it is 67 degrees Fahrenheit, 19 Celsius in the air, and 80 Fahrenheit or 27 Celsius on the ground for these drivers. Humidity of 48%, and then a wind out of the southwest at 9, but with the shape of these cars, not as much aerodynamics back in that day. Where's there, Nico?
Yeah, 1966 and 67 was pretty much the first few years that aerodynamics started coming into play, so to say. Well, not quite aerodynamics, but the downforce itself. They already started before that with optimization of, you know, limiting drag and everything. The Honda RA272 is a good example of that. Besides other crazy mechanical engineering advances with that thing. But the Lotus 49 is one of those cars that, well, the base that we see here that debuted in 1967, it was just so good that it ran for a couple other years after that in different specifications, you know, with the high wings later on, and then also with just further advancing the aero package on that car.
Riding up board with Sub 68, he's going around practicing his own race. He's tucked in behind Ricardo Ruiz. And they're going over the jump there. You saw those front wheels just get off the ground. Absolutely amazing to see every single time. These drivers have to adjust their suspensions to be able to absorb that jump, and that's probably part of what determines how their setup is today. But Seb, you can see him. He just got a little bit off the apex there and had to seriously drift the car through the center of the corner to keep it on track. That's something that these drivers have to deal with that we don't deal with a lot in modern vehicles.
Yeah, in modern vehicles, it's a lot less likely to get air. I mean, Flugplatz and Pflanzgard nowadays even are still sometimes those cars where you can get a little bit of air just because you're still going over the crest. But as I said, the first time they started actually reducing those crests so you don't jump as extremely over them was in 1971, specifically because, well, the jumps were getting too big, the cars were getting too fast. And, well, a lot of very, very bad accidents happened around here, and the drivers just started boycotting racing here. So, bit by bit, they just kept, you know, modernizing the Nordschleife, so to say. But even then, you can still see, you know, this is one of those classic circuits that just built into the countryside, and the proper soul of the circuit was never lost here.
Yeah, absolutely. The soul of the circuit was never lost. They're doing some repaving and reprofiling as they do every year. They did over the winter, and so the track opening up more most recently, there have been a couple of changes over there, but still retaining the character of the racetrack there. You can see Ricardo Ruiz is going off a little bit, and you can see Seb Tixier sliding it a little bit through that corner, try and hang on to it here as they dive down into the lowest part of the track. 14 seconds left in our practice, and then we'll go to the grid. It's going to be awesome to see these cars take off here around the Nordschleife. It's the combined circuit today, so we're going to see every aspect that there is to see around this circuit. It's going to be an amazing race, Nico, but that's going to take us into our starting grid as we wait for the session to tick over. And that's going to take us into our starting grid. It is going to be Adrius Valenteus on pole position with Seb Tixier next to him. Mick Claridge is going to start off behind Valenteus, and Robert Plumley is going to start off behind Adrius Valenteus. And then it is going to be Jorge Nieva and Gary Ho on row 3 with Nicola Cocci and Kevin Verbruggen on row 4. Then it's Bill Tyler and Ricardo Ruiz rounding out the top 10, Nico.
Next up, we have row 6. We have Xavier Sanchez and Jan Stefan in 11th and 12th, followed by Laust Olsen and John Olsen, the two Olsen and Olson in row 7. Then Juan E. Rodriguez and Nikos Handke in row 8. And then 17th and 18th are placed with Matt White and Ricardo Espinella Martinez. Cam Porter and Donald Peake form row 10 and bring us to the row 11.
Absolutely, that's going to be Josephine Becker, who's going to line up in 21st with Pablo Hernvey is lining up in 22nd. We got Robert Plumley and Jonathan Hordain on row 12, and Aku Liski and Glenn Becker on row 13. Row 14 goes to Jason Clapper and Matthew Keane, and then we've got Jody as well lining up in 14th, and we're on the green flag already. Adrius Valenteus off to a great jump over Seb Tixier. You can see the field spreading out a little bit, breaking into turn 1 on cold brakes, and this 49 is going to be a nightmare, and it looks like everyone's doing pretty good at this point, but Seb Tixier is going to line up in 2nd position. Kundelis went a little bit off track, as well as Claridge able to line up in the 4th position, but it's as they were to start this race in the front.
Really a lot of moves left, right, and center here. A huge grid, of course, as well right now. And you can see Laust Olsen on the outside there, I think, trying to get the moves on in the number 14. Around the second car around the outside now. I think that is actually quite a bit further back, so he might have stalled there at the start. But luckily getting the car started again and, well, making his way back up the order.
Mick Claridge has taken a spin from 3rd position. He's now back and falling back further and further. He's now going to resume racing back in the 23rd position. There are 40 drivers who started this race today, so it is an absolutely massive grid, but fortunately, it's an absolutely massive track. Reminder, it's a lapped race, this race, 4 laps around the Nordschleife and Nürburgring combined circuit today.
And with the combined circuit, we have the best of both worlds, the best of the past and the present with the Nürburgring. You can still see those cars sliding up the hill of the Schumacher S. You know, these cars barely hanging on to grip with those bias ply tires. Absolutely fantastic to watch. As we have Gary Ho there in 5th place, trying to close the gap to 4th place, Jorge Nieva.
We've had an absolutely massive incident in the back of the field, about 6 cars going off all at once. That was Ben Summers and Thomas Tuba. Laust Olsen was involved with that, as well as Mats Linden and Daniel Steger. So unfortunately, they're all having issues in the back of the field. We're still taking a look at Gary Hill. Let's take a look at this replay here. This is what happened to Mick Claridge. He was in 3rd position before this moment.
Oh, just a bit too aggressive on the downshift, I think. Clutch kicks in, the tires spin up, and after looking up for a moment, and yeah, the car doesn't like that at all. Those gearboxes from back then, very aggressive with the clutch.
Absolutely, there was no double staging of the clutch at all. It's just direct clutch application for these drivers, so they have to be very careful when they move into those gears to get that rev matching right. Otherwise, you can spin up those rear tires and have a real issue. Gary Ho, we're still taking a look at him. He's currently in the 5th position. He just made the pass on Nicola Cocci and is trying to catch up to the back of Jorge Nieva to make a move.
Up Flugplatz for the first time this race, and just what an alien sight, you know? Just seeing those cars just take off, and once again here, just a smaller bunny hop this time, but Arturas Kundelis all over the back of Seb Tixier, and they're both still holding on to Valenteus, and going through Arenberg now, down the foxhole.
Valenteus has been able to stretch it up to about 1 second, but that's nothing given the way that these cars behave. Kundelis tucked right in behind Tixier right now, trying to get a move done is going to be hard around this track. There's not a lot of places to pass. You're going to have to capitalize on mistakes like the one that Seb Tixier just made. He's going to go off track.
And barely holding on to the car, losing a place, but luckily not into the wall. We see, you know, a lot of cars going into the wall there in real life nowadays, but they at least have some bodywork and a bit more, well, indestructible suspension than the flimsy ones on here. So Septixia, in the moment, of course, quite mad with himself, losing that position, but luckily still holding on, so he can still try to fight back later on in this lap.
Looks like Xavier Sanchez has had some connection issues. iRacing will put him towards the pits because of that. Let's take a look at what happened here. This was the massive incident that I talked about earlier. Daniel Steger takes it too deep into the corner and clips the rear end of one of the other vehicles. That sends a lot of other cars off. You can see damage from a previous moment happening as he went into the... Oh my goodness, and an unsafe rejoin crosses Daniel in front of the rest of the field as well. Really unfortunate moments for a lot of drivers there.
Yeah, it's just really, really unlucky as it runs at the moment. And, I mean, in this situation, I just feel really sorry for that last car there, you know, just trying to get through there, and all of a sudden, someone rejoining right in front. And, of course, you don't expect that in that situation, as they go through Lauda left now. Septixia is still all over the back, and, well, Valentier's not quite pulling away as much as I thought initially. But I think he's also, you know, even a fast driver like him, you know, is really, really respectful towards the green hell.
We have a nice battle going on for P13 right now. Cam Porter leads a group of cars full of Juan Rodriguez, Matt White, Jan Stefan, and Mick Claridge, who's made it up to 17th after having his early moment. And this is a long train of cars headed towards one of the longest, not straights, but portions of the track. Oh, and Mick going way off course there. You can see Matt White trying to make a move on Jan Stefan there. Matt unable to do so, but Jan has actually been able to make that move forward.
I was gonna say, but then, yeah, saw that little sideways moment and, you know, takes your breath away to see those cars on the limit like that. But yeah, Mick Claridge still in the race, luckily. Also, you know, someone running the classic Lotus livery, which is quite nice to see, and now making their way up to the Caracciola carousel.
Absolutely. Further back in the pack, Donald Peak has just gotten passed by Shinsuke Tashima for the 23rd position, riding on board with Mick Claridge as he's now caught up to the back of the pack. They're about to get into the second half of the course. This is my favorite portion of the course. The floor around here is great. Oh my goodness, that is a car off. That is going to be Juan Rodriguez. Oh, and Mick Claridge has to slam on the brakes to try and make it by. Mick Claridge was able to make it by Matt White as Matt was watching the incident happen ahead.
Really, really difficult situation, but expertly handled by all of them there. And I do agree with you. This is the best section of the section of the circuit. The entire section from Hoacht, which is the highest point of the track, and then it goes all the way back downhill. And then through Wippermann, YouTube corner, you know, Pflanzgarten 1 and 2. It's just an absolutely fantastic part here, as they now make it to the famous YouTube corner. Brünnchen.
Yeah, absolutely. Here they go through the famous YouTube corner. It unloads on you, so you see a lot of cars end up in that gravel trap. We possibly saw one up ahead that was doing that. I believe that was going to be John Olsen up ahead that had that issue. But Mick Claridge really trying to look for a way by Juan Rodriguez right now. He's definitely got the overspeed on him, but there's nowhere to pass around here. Oh, Juan getting a little bit upset there. The front of the car dipping down quite aggressively over that jump.
Yeah, that's the difficult part. You know, with the GT3 cars, they can basically just wait until after that jump, then slam on the brakes and make the corner. These cars don't have that luxury. You have to either lift or get on the brakes first. Oh, Mick Claridge touching the grass there in the Bell of S, as they now make their way to Schwalbenschwanz and Kleines Karussell. And, oh, that is a spin, and he can't hold that.
Jan Stefan, unfortunately, had that spin. Unfortunately, looks like it's going to be... Oh, and Mick Claridge with damage as well. Both of them are going to be out with suspension damage, unfortunately. That's another driver spun around. That's Juan Rodriguez they made contact with. Unfortunate for all three of them. But look at this. This is second position. This is Seb Tixier and Arturas Kundelis. Kundelis going for the move on the inside. First time on the long straight. And they're up to speeds unheard of. 200 miles an hour under the bridge.
All over each other, down to Tiergarten, now down to Hohenrhein chicane, hard on the brakes, close to the wall. And you can see those cars really bobbing and, you know, going up and down over those bumps as they're shooting just past the wall there. Tobias Helmvig now looking to make the move as well. Both of them over to the very left of the circuit from our point of view, and then down the hill. Oh, there's almost... You can barely fit the hand between those cars there. Jesus.
Matt White was watching Tobias Helmvig really struggle under the bridge. It's so easy to take the bridge turn in our modern vehicles, but Tobias, I think, probably has his soiled pants after that one, is going to give Matt White that move.
Oh, yeah, those tires are hanging on for dear life. But, yeah, masterful driving there. Really good reaction from both of them. And Helmvig just falling back a little bit, but that's not necessarily too bad. We see there White and Jourdain, or Conde Jr., I think. No, Jourdain, sorry. Oh, and that's a spin from him, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So, unfortunately, he's going to go off into the infield grass here on the newer section of the course. These cars much more, strangely enough, it's funny to say this, but they're much more suited to the Nordschleife rather than the GP circuit. The GP circuit has very slick, modern surface, and these radial tires just don't bite into it the way that they do on the worn road surface.
It's also, the nature is, this circus is already relatively flowing for a modern GP circuit, but you can tell that it was still properly engineered as a racetrack. And the Nordschleife is, you can just tell from the character of it, every single corner, how it's off camber, in the most inconvenient locations, how it's going properly up and down with the hills. It was just built into the countryside in the 1920s, and it's stayed that way since then. And you can really tell, when the historic cars go on there, you can just really still feel that was exactly what the circuit was built for.
We're taking a look at Shinsuke Tashima, who's up 11 positions since starting this race. So Shinsuke not having the qualifying that they wanted, possibly didn't qualify. In fact, that is exactly right. 30th, they would have been about 30th to start the race. So they've made it quite a ways up this track. We're taking a look now at Jason Clapper just ahead of Shinsuke and trying to make a move now on the inside here of Tobias Helmvig, and is going to not be able to get that done before the turn-in for the chicane. So Tobias starting to fall back a little bit after that issue under the bridge.
Yeah, I think in those situations when you have one of those on-the-edge moments, as we have McClouchy, I think that is the semi-spin there. He just got a bit too close in Schwalbenschwanz there, I think, then had to go on the brakes, and wheel-on-wheel contact. That's really unpleasant.
Absolutely, and that sends them both hopping, and unfortunately that's going to be suspension damage for both drivers. Fortunately, another one of the drivers is able to make it through there, so not that much going on. Looks like we've got Michael Grissinger, who's got a mechanical flag, unfortunately, and as well as Kevin Verbruggen, who is up in 6th position. He's now had to take to a tow as well. We're on lap 2 of 4. So just under halfway, about a quarter of the way through this race. Look at this, over the jump they're going to go. I thought they were going to do it side by side. Jason thought better of that, but oh no, a big moment there, and Tobias Helmvig is going to go off, and then we got another one. That's Shinsuke Tashima, who's off as well in the middle of the track. We've got more drivers spinning around.
My goodness, that's one of those dangerous
Glenn Becker
things.
hung on to it somehow. Glenn Becker was that last driver you saw coming through, and he was sideways entirely after the jump and actually did not wreck the car. That's a miracle.
We were speaking about soiled pants earlier. I think there's now a hole in the seat in that driver's car. I'm gonna be honest.
Take a look now at Ricciardo Espinola Martinez, who's trying to make a move here on Donald P. Caught up to the back of Don, and Don trying to navigate around this circuit. Actually, I'm looking at the wrong driver. That is Cam Porter, who's actually tucked in behind. Cam has been able to break away from that battle that we saw earlier for 13th and has caught up to the back of Ricardo Martinez. Let's take a look at this replay here. This is from Glenn Becker, who made that save. He comes over the hill. Look at this.
Yeah.
Just gets lucky enough to have enough to get close enough to that barrier. Unbelievable. Makes a little bit of contact with the outside wall, but my goodness.
The steering is straight, so I think it should still be relatively fine comparatively. But my goodness, just getting... That's one of those situations where you really notice, you get one moment wrong here, and, well, immediately everything goes sideways. Everything hits the fan and gets splattered all over the wall behind it, and it's a very inopportune experience for everyone involved. But, yeah.
Here's Arturo Skundalus putting some heavy pressure on Seb Tixier right now as they go up towards the longer, straighter portion up the hill. It's a long way up the hill, but these cars not short on power. 170 miles an hour right now as they head up the hill. It's amazing the speeds that these cars can carry given how hard they are to handle. Look at that. Seb Tixier absolutely sliding up through. You can see the cars jumping. They're absolutely losing traction over the top of these bumps. Driving this car around the Nürburgring is an experience. If you've never done it before, I highly suggest it.
Yeah, it is absolutely a fantastic experience for sure. Even the normal road cars, that can only make around 120 miles an hour, that's still an experience, just going through Tiergarten and then pretty much having to involuntarily nod as you have the suspension and the entire car just load up with weight for a moment. It's something that you remember for the rest of your life, 100%. And Skundalus, I think with how he's attacking those cars, then, speaking of nodding involuntarily, yeah, that's just...
Oh my goodness. This is why drivers perished in this era of Formula One. That probably would have been a perishing moment, to be honest with you, given the fact that one of the 49s got shot back out into the track, into the head of another driver.
I think that's also a great demonstration as to there's always this big question of, well, if I can just go faster than the real life drivers in the simulator, doesn't that just mean that the simulator is unrealistic and obviously it's just a game? No, the thing is, what people don't realize very often, back in the day, drivers held back a lot more. Even legendary drivers like Jim Clark, who qualified 9 seconds faster than everyone else around here, even they held back simply because a crash like that, for us, that's, return to garage. Maybe the wrists hurt a little bit if you had a direct drive, but for them, it was over. That's it. So, of course, they held back more.
Yeah, absolutely. It was absolutely a risking of life and limb to get into these pine boxes and go out there and race. We're taking a look at Laust Olsen right now, who 19th position right now, as he's being caught by Matthew Keane trying to keep going. Laust down 15 spots from his starting position after that stall on the starting line, trying to catch up to the back of Roberto Pongrazi.
Also notice that he doesn't really have bodywork there. He's just got the cooler exposed. Not great for aerodynamics, but, well, maybe that extra cooling will be good for the engine in the end. But still hanging on, still not being deterred by that. And around the lower speed areas here, it's no real handicap for him either. Where we have Pongrazi, our F2 championship leader, actually going through ice curve right on the tail of the car ahead of him. And now into Flipsgard 1.
Yeah, over the jump they go into Flipsgard 1, and absolutely on the back of this train of four. This is four drivers. This is Alejandro Sanchez, Glenn Becker, who had that amazing save, Okuliski, and then Roberto Pongrazi, who are all in this four-car train.
Running really, really nice and uniform right now. And here we have that spreading out again into corners, cars sliding a bit wider on the brakes. Some trying to take the corner a bit tighter, some a bit wider. And, that's just something that you don't really see with modern cars anymore nowadays.
Yeah, different lines can offer you different benefits and detractions coming off of those corners. Oh my goodness. In the background. Yeah, so we're coming onto the long straightaway now. We've got four cars in a line, and this is where the aerodynamics, or relative lack thereof, can definitely come into play, but the engine power can overcome the aerodynamics. Already through 180 miles an hour, they're going to make it up to 200 by the time they hit the bridge. I think that Glenn's going to go for a move here.
Yeah, 190 miles an hour now, 195 from Glenn Becker.
It might be a double move. And Sanchez going to come back at him. He thinks better of it. Under the bridge is much sketchier. Oh my goodness, Glenn's off of the grass. Manages to get back on. Is he going to be able to brake in time? The answer is yes.
Oh, and that's almost the second big save this lap. My goodness.
Starting lap 3, halfway through this race for these drivers down in the battle for the 21st position. Up at the front of the field, Andres Valentis is out to 4.5 second lead over Seb Tixier, who's still got Arturo Skundalus tucked in behind him for company. Jorge Nieves, second position in the Formula One Championship, is 8 seconds off of the lead. So if Valentis makes any sort of mistake, he's going to be right in there with the group. Jorge Nieves has been... Honestly... he's been setting some pretty decent laps, but he was 2 seconds slower last lap compared to Seb Tixier and Arturas Kundelis, so he's falling back of our top 3.
Not just that, I saw Nicolas Cocky earlier also setting a new fastest lap of the race, 8:26. So it's getting quite interesting how they are starting to adapt to the circuit, how the track is maybe also starting to warm up a little bit.
Seb Tixier blew his engine, and he's taking it into the wall. So unfortunately for Seb, he's out of this race.
Unbelievable. In the 3rd lap, that's just one of those signs, you know. You have no sequential gearbox, you have no driving aids, and just one misshift can just end the race for you, because these engines, despite being F1 engines, despite being so high spec and high tech for the time, they are still incredibly fragile.
Absolutely. Here's Cam Porter, who just got passed by Matt White. Matt trying to claw his way forward. Matt White is up 5 positions now from his starting position, so started off down in the 17th position, is now up to 12th, up ahead of Cam Porter. So lots of drivers. Speaking of drivers changing positions, we've had a lot of attrition this race. Of our 41 starting drivers, we have had, we've had 9 retirements so far. I'd read through them, but we'd be here most of the rest of this race. Look at this battle, though. In that battle for 21st, very tight stuff here between Glenn Becker and Alejandro Sanchez. They've got Pangrazi and Liski for company.
Less than half a meter apart with wheel-to-wheel action there, so they really have to watch out. Pangrazi slowly making progress as well, so it's looking quite good for the Formula 2 Championship leader. Obviously, there's a couple, F1 drivers in there as well, so for him, there's no benefit there. That is the lead car. I think that is...
Glenn Becker, he had a slowdown.
Yeah, and having to go through the gravel there. Oh, well, gravel, the grass, more accurately, and barely avoiding contact there and keeping it together.
Yeah, Glenn Becker unfortunately had a slowdown penalty that he had to serve, so he had to back out of it, causing a little bit of a confusion for all the rest of these drivers. They're over the first of the jumps that takes you to a right-hander, and here's the big one. Is anyone going to spin off this time? The answer is yes. It's the lead driver. That's Sanchez, who barely hung on to it, but my goodness.
He keeps it together. Unbelievable.
These drivers taking all the risks right now.
Oh my God. You can... That's one of the fun parts where you can tell who has a more soft suspension, who has a stiffer suspension. The guys with the softer one, if they try to brake before the crest, you can really tell how the front is still like unloaded or like loaded up, and the rear end is a lot easier to get light.
Front end issues not really an issue for Laust Olsen as far as his pace is concerned. He's caught to the back of Jose Condi, and still on his recovery drive is Laust. Let's take a look at this replay of what happened to Seb here.
Going to NGK chicane, and down the way there. Yeah, just rolling off the grid there, and in frustration, I guess, just pressing escape and letting it hit the barriers.
Looks like Jason Clapper has had a spin. He was in 15th position before the spin. He's now dropped down to 18th and is continuing to resume. We're back taking a look at Laust Olsen. Nico, we talked about the suspensions, and coming over the jump, we're definitely seeing, like you said, the difference between the soft suspensions and the hard suspensions. Upon landing, the hardest suspensions, they bounce a couple times. And I'm guessing that's part of what you have to weigh as a driver as to whether you set up for the jump or you set up for the rest of the track.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you want a little bit more active, or a bit more of an active car, or a little bit more of a smoother driving experience, which can quickly turn sluggish, though. And that's just something that these guys, we have the best guys in the field here. So they're all over the place, they're fighting for every single tenth of a second around here, and they know how to set up their car to suit their needs. It's just sometimes, you have to really weigh the pros and cons, as we have Jason Clapper there as well with the spin.
Yeah, that was the replay of Jason's spin. He was recovered back into 18th position. Laust Olsen putting some good pressure on Jose Condi right now, as Jose really hanging it out on the outside of the circuit, but Laust goes to join him. Onto the grass they go, and that means that Laust is going to lose the momentum that he had on Jose. He's not going to be able to make a move into the right-hander upcoming.
And he also has that disadvantage there. The front bodywork is gone, so there will be a bit higher drag no matter what he does. Even in the slipstream, the airflow is still going to be a little bit less even. But on the brakes and through these more complex corners that are mostly about, just placing the car, Olsen can still keep up there, position the car a little bit better, and is all over the back of Jose Conde.
Riding on board now with Laus as we go through the carousel, one of the most, probably the most unique corner in racing. And he absolutely killed that compared to Jose, but Jose getting some good speed off of the corner. Laus is going to have to size up for a move, and he's really wanted something there, but had to back out of it. He can't afford to get any more damage on the front. That intercooler extremely exposed.
Yes, indeed.
Intercooler, very radiator back in the day.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Jesus Christ, that was really, really close, and now he's getting closer again. So I think Olsen a lot more confident on the brakes and on just getting the weight shift for that car in, especially around these parts here with Wippermann.
A little bit wide there.
Yeah, getting a bit overconfident there as well, knowing where he has his strengths and the weaknesses with his car in the current condition. Now going down to Brünchen, obviously going to try and go for a later as apex. Takes all of the, landed on the outside there that are, these little rocks that are put in the grass there to give it a bit more grip on the outside.
And you notice how smooth his inputs are. You think of these older cars, you think about the drivers wrestling them around, but on a high-speed track like this one, you can see just how smooth Laus is being with the inputs to try and get the car to behave. Yeah, he's having to put in some extra turn here or there, but he's not wrestling it like we see in the movie Grand Prix around Monaco.
I mean, that is always the thing, you have to really consider, despite these cars sliding a lot more because they had less grip back in the day, smooth is always the fastest. You can also see that from, Jim Clark, even though he did like those big, also gets it in the gravel, but keeps it out of the wall. But that will hurt his chances there a bit, as Valentius does it 8:22.392.
And Alejandro Sanchez has gone around from the 20th position. He's now lost his right rear wheel, so unfortunately he's had to take it back to the pits. And yes, Valentius 8:22.3. That is an unbelievable time. It is 4 seconds faster than the next fastest driver.
And he's slowly been starting to gap everyone else. In the first 2 laps, it was only up to 4 seconds. And third lap, I guess he just basically said, okay, I'm comfortable now. Let's get down to the proper business. And is starting to put out the laps that we know from Valentius. But also, he has the liberty now to decide how much he is going to push. Because 8 seconds... Sure, if you take a corner a little bit slower or with, a lot less risk, you might lose half a second or a second, but that's still, something that he can trade in now instead of, trying to push on the limit to catch the person ahead of him and maybe then throwing the car away.
Yeah, or taking the jump. He doesn't have to take it with full speed this lap. He can absolutely back off and just ride it. But yeah, Valentius, unbelievable driver here. Here is Sanchez and his moment just over the crest there. The car got unsettled on the rear wheel spin, and that sends him around. Major right rear damage there. And getting punted in the front as well.
Yeah, Glenn Becker.
That's Nikos Hanke who had that moment, who ran into him. So Hanke in the pits getting repairs done right now. Valentius, as we said, 8.5 seconds ahead. He started his final lap, but we have a lot of time to talk about that because with an 8-minute lap, it's going to be a while.
Yes, indeed. And Valentius, once again, we can see him just placing the car absolutely perfectly. Jim Clark would be absolutely proud there. And Laus Olsen, despite that exciting off there at Schwalbenschwanz, after Döttinger, Hohenrhein, and then the first bit of the Grand Prix circuit, actually got it together so well. Now in 13th place, getting ahead of Conde.
Laus has 5 seconds up the road to Jonathan Jourdain, so if he can make that move up the road and get that one position, then it's another 1.5 seconds up to Robert Plumley. That would get him back to his starting position. Oh my goodness, I guess Kindless is not going to take our advice and took the jump anyway.
Nieva as well. It's absolutely majestic to watch though, isn't it?
It's almost like a dolphin breaching. It's absolutely beautiful to watch these vehicles. We're riding on board with Gary Ho in his setup. I noticed that Seb Tixey didn't even have a monitor in front of him for his VR rig, but Seb Looks like he's got the Pimax Crystal, I believe, for his VR headset, and he's even got a classic Lotus 49 wheel on his rig.
Got a lot of dedication to the sports, and, well, honestly, I'd love to have that experience as well, driving these cars around this wonderful circuit in VR with the age pattern as well. And I think actually he also has it in a dog box style, so basically that the first gear is down where the second gear would be for normal gearboxes, because you barely use the first gear in these settings at all.
Absolutely. So the beauty of sim racing, where you can configure all of that to your liking. Fantastic driving from all these drivers. Gary Ho coming through into this left-hander. That's another sharp left-hander before we head into the next section of the race, trying to catch up to Jorge Nieva. Nieva 2.5 seconds back of Kundelis. There's Jason Clapper going over the jump, a little bit nose heavy on that machine. He took to the brakes before the jump, but probably not early enough. Fortunately, he didn't have any instability once he landed.
Yeah, quite lucky. Well, also, you have to know your car to know how to load it up properly. In these racing situations, it's obviously easy to make a mistake there. But these guys, they know their cars, they are practicing for these cars quite a lot. And obviously they have to build the setups as well. Or, well, get a setup that actually suits them. So, yeah, this is really about mastery of, load changes, getting the slip angles right, knowing just when the grid starts to drop off and how the car handles with different fuel loads.
Jonathan Jourdain tucked in behind Robert Plumley. If Plumley slows down Jourdain, Laus might be able to get there. He's cut that 5-second gap down to 3.5, Laus Olsen has, so he's only 3.5 seconds back of this battle we're watching on screen between Jourdain and Plumley. I have to mention it, it's no surprise to anybody, but we've had almost half of the field have incidents and have to come into the pits, from Thomas Tumba in 25th all the way down to Fernando de la Fuente, who didn't make it past the first couple of corners. This has been a race of attrition, which is no surprise.
Yeah, it's named the Green Hell for not just the reason that it's just scary to drive on. It's also an absolute nightmare for mechanical sympathy. I mean, even nowadays, you see, 180 cars starting the 24 hours of Nürburgring, and, the average is that 33% of them will not make it to the finish line, or that they'll at least be in for repair for a couple of hours during that race.
Cam Porter and his Team Lotus livery with the checkered stripes across the car, currently in 10th position. He's 12 seconds back of Matt White with a 4.5 second gap to Robert Plumley in behind. Jourdain still putting some pressure on Plumley in the background as they go up the hill. Absolutely amazing to ride on board with these drivers as they go through these sections of the course. With so many jumps and bumps, the car getting unstable, squirming out from underneath you due to the suspension compressions.
Rocks being thrown up there at Jourdain as they're making their way up to Mutkurve. Well, not as much courage required here for this one, simply because you definitely have to brake in this car. And,
I would say that there's more courage required because you have to know when to brake in this car, and that could be a challenge.
I mean, we have this old German saying, der bremst verliert, who brakes loses, but I think in this situation, who brakes better will be more likely to win in the end.
Jourdain through the carousel, launching out the other side, not nearly as soul-crushing as it is in the modern, very tightly sprung suspension vehicles. These older 49s can take it a little bit more gracefully than our modern counterparts, and actually can take more speed through it because of the softer suspensions that they have. Jourdain's starting to fall a little bit back of Plumley right now, but Laus Olsen has been on the charge. He is only just a little bit behind. Here's our leader, Valenteus. We thought he was going to take it easy this lap. He started the lap with an 8-second gap. He's to 12 seconds right now as he's coming through the last section of the course onto the back straightaway. Audrius Valenteus, unbeatable in multiple series. This man is an alien.
Absolutely. And, well, we saw that already last season. We saw it earlier this season. I mean, the first race was won, of course, by Jorge Nieva. But, Valenteus, really, really fast guy. All of the guys in this field, of course, also getting along very, very well. And, well, with masterclass of this caliber, that's a very well-deserved win. Just a few corners to go.
He's not taking it easy either. Absolutely rigging it through the final sector. He's going to punch the throttle off of the final corner. A little bit of rear slide there as he takes it to the line. Andres Valenteus is going to win by a handy 12 seconds over Arturas Kundelis. In the background,
He gets another fastest lap.
absolutely. That's 821. Unbelievable. Arturas Kundelis is going to come home in second. Bill Tyler just made a move on Ricardo Ruiz under the bridge. That was insane. Bill Tyler wants 7th position, and he's going to get it. Ricardo Ruiz trying to take it deep on the brakes. Is he going to have a chance coming to the line? The answer is no. The car slides out from under him. Ruiz is able to recover, but Bill Tyler's going to get 6th. Ruiz 7th.
That's the latest of late moves there. My goodness. Fantastic racing from him. Now Laust Olsen with the, take the Lotus with a bite taken out of it, but in the slipstream, is he going to be able to overcome that drag deficit though and get a move done? I don't think he is.
He's in the slipstream. It's giving him the speed he needs to maintain, but that's all he can do. 200 miles an hour under the bridge they go, and they're still flat out until they hit the braking zone right in the compression. And then look at this. It's Jason Clapper who's trying to get past. He's trying to, he's getting passed by Matthew Keane. Here they go into the bridge. Side by side they go. Who's going to lift? It's neither of them. Jason Clapper has to fall behind a little bit there. Matthew Keane was able to hang on to it. That was an impressive move there from Keane to get that move done.
Now, final 2 corners. Can Clapper maybe get a bit the power better down? No, not quite. Tries to still get alongside and almost a photo finish. Finishing 3/10 apart.
Matthew Keane is going to get 15th position. Here is the replay of Bill Tyler making that move. He absolutely took as much road as he possibly could. What a move there under the bridge. Unbelievable stuff from Bill Tyler.
Oh my goodness. That was a fantastic race to watch. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Watching the 49s around the Nürburgring is one of the joys, and you should drive it too. Absolutely take it out for a spin. But that's going to take us to our results here. Andres Valenteus with that 12-second gap over Arturas Kundelis in the end for second position. Jorge Nieva is going to come home in third position, putting him still in striking distance of Valenteus in the points championship. Gary Ho is going to finish in fourth position with Nicola Cocci in fifth. Bill Tyler made that pass under the bridge on the final lap to pass Ricardo Ruiz for sixth position, with John Olsen coming home in a solid eighth. We've got Matt White in ninth position, and Cam Porter rounds out your top 10, Nico.
And in 11th place, Robert Plumley with a very calm race, but consistency is key. Half a second before Jonathan Jordal, and another half second before Laust Olsen. In 14th, we have Jose Conde, then Matthew Keane in that last lap pass there against Jason Clapper. Then we have Donald Peake, followed by Roberto Pangrazi. We have two championship leader getting a good result in as well today. Akuliski is in 19th, and Glenn Becker, after multiple absolutely hair-raising saves, in 20th.
And then in 21st, it's going to be Kurt Clapper with Mats Linden in 22nd. Ben Summers is going to finish in 23rd, and Adam King down there in 24th position, the first driver to make a trip through the pit lane. I believe he had a drive-through penalty. Thomas Tuba is the first driver to have issues. He's going to finish in 25th position, and everyone else was in the pits for 7 minutes or more. That's Nikos Handke, Jan Steffen, Seb Tixier, Ricardo Espinola Martinez, Alejandro Sanchez, Emilio Pradera, Kevin Verbruggen, Michael Grisiger, Tobias Hervny, Sensuke Tashima, Mick Claridge, Xavier Sanchez, Fernando de la Fuente, Han Orandian, and Daniel Steger, as well as Josephine Becker, your 42 drivers who started this race. That was a very impressive race for sure, Nico, and I'm honestly surprised that even as fast as I know that that Valenteus is, 12 seconds up front with an 8:21. That's an impressive time.
Yeah, in 4 laps as well. Like, that's not a gap that you easily build up. After 15 laps in 1967, Denny Hulme won 38.5 seconds ahead of Jack Brabham, his teammate, of course. 12 seconds, so almost a third of that in 4 laps, so less than a third of that race distance. That is, just absolutely impressive. And Valenteo's once again proving that he's an absolute, animal behind the wheel. But nevertheless, all these guys that finished the race as well, absolutely fantastic job from everyone.
We have Valenteo's nearest challenger in the points right now, Jorge Nieva, finishing in third position on the podium today. Jorge, what a race we had today. Driving the 49er on the Green Hill is definitely a monster feat. How did it feel out there for you today?
It's difficult, yeah. And without using Arturas that fast, I knew I didn't have any chance. Luckily, I think Seb had an engine failure, so here I am. But I didn't deserve that podium, I think.
So, are you the kind of driver who does a stiff setup for this track or a soft setup to take the bumps a little bit more handily around here? Because we've been having some debates in the booth about that.
Well, actually, I don't know how to make setups, so I always use the exact same setup all the season. I have been using the exact same setup for maybe 2 years, and I only change the gear ratios and to adjust to the corners and straights. But I think my setup is a bit stiff or stiffer than others, but it's my all tracks setup.
Well, it's impressive that you're able to get the speed out of it at all tracks, but yeah, this is such a challenging race course, and the competition is so high. How do you keep your focus, especially going through, 180 corners per lap around here for an hour?
I've been driving here at Nordschleife for maybe 20 years, so I know the track very well. You have to keep concentrated, but it's almost like 4 tracks, one next to the other, so it isn't that long. It's just a bit longer than others.
Well, Jorge, congrats on a P3. Is there anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
You guys, and also Topi Cortiniami. My old track setup comes from his setup from Spa 2 years ago, so I would like to thank him for that setup.
It's good to hear Topi's name again. We miss you, man. And thank you, Jorge, for joining us in the booth. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, bye.
That was Jorge Nieva, who finished in third position, and finishing in 10th position is Cam Porter. He's with Nico.
Cam, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Difficult race today for sure, but nevertheless, 10th place, lived through it. What was your impression?
Oh gosh, well, obviously just surviving the Nürburgring is a win. So I'm thrilled to be inside the top 10. I just focused on keeping the car pointed straight and off the walls, and if someone was challenging me, I just made it easy for them to pass me. And didn't fight too hard, just concentrated on racing my own race and racing against the track. It's a challenging track, obviously, and just surviving attrition is very important here.
Yeah, true words have never been said. Overall, what do you think is the biggest challenge when tackling the Green Hell with these cars?
Well, your guy was talking about earlier, just staying focused is challenging, especially if you're not really close to anybody on the track. Your mind starts to wander, and that's when problems happen. So just try to stay focused at all times. And it's like I said, it's challenging, but just keep your eyes on the road and hands on the wheel.
Out of curiosity, you're driving with an H pattern or sequential?
Yes, I have an H pattern shifter and a direct drive wheel, and like a lot of folks that race here, H pattern shifter is really fun and just adds a little bit of realism. Although I don't have it set up like a dog box like the real car does, but kudos to those guys that race the H pattern shifter.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm also a huge fan of historic sim racing, so, also with H-pattern and all that in there, getting the full immersion. Overall, we're seeing on the screen, we're seeing your car approach Flugplatz at the moment. So I gotta ask, what was your preferred way of tackling that? A lift or a brake or trying to stay on throttle?
Yeah, no, I certainly don't stay on throttle. I brake just a little bit before the crest. Just give it a little bit of gas so my nose doesn't dive down when I catch air, and just land softly, brake just a little bit before turning in. So yeah, I probably take the Nürburgring a little bit more careful than a lot of the fast guys. But hey, just surviving is really important.
Absolutely. To finish first you must finish. And, well, you showed that very well today with gaining 9 positions in the race. Something that not everyone can say in completing only 4 laps of the Nordschleife. So, yeah, congratulations. And do you want to give any call-outs to anyone? Friends, family, sponsors?
Just thanks to GSRC for putting on a great broadcast every week. And well, thanks again. We'll see you again in the next race.
Yeah, hopefully. Looking forward to seeing you on track again, Cam.
Thanks. See ya.
That was Cam Porter, who finished in P10, and that's going to close us out for today. I want to give a big thank you to the team today, Nico, Christian, and Dougie. And make sure to check out our social media website and merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Speaking of not missing a moment, going on right now is the Sim Racing Republic Sports Car Championship. You do not want to miss that. And our next race for these drivers is Fuji, April 12th at 9:30 Eastern. Next up on GSRC after the Sim Racing Republic, actually during, but next up for us is going to be IMSA Vintage. That's at Thruxton Circuit for the first time at 1 p.m. Eastern today. And don't miss the other upcoming races that are also here on your screen. We hope you've enjoyed joining us today as much as we've enjoyed bringing this racing to you, and we hope to see you back again soon. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.